Hello, everyone. I'm Aubriana Decker. I'm a member of Women in Science at Columbia. I'm hosting with my two teammates, Avin Donovan and Eliza Yeager. I'll be talking the most between the three of us, but they're going to be helping me watch the chat so that if you put any questions in the chat, we can do the interrupting for you and make sure that everyone doesn't linger in the waiting room. And I'm super excited to introduce Drs. Titi Shodiya and Dr. Zakiya Whatley. They're the two co-hosts of the super popular podcast on Spotify, Dope Labs, and are amazing at taking complex scientific concepts, distilling them down to make them really fun and understandable and accessible by the public audience. And I'm really excited to hear from them today. We have questions prepared, so that will be sort of interview style, but please at any point, type your own questions in the chat and we'll make those a priority. Let's see, what else? Yes, please stay muted if you can. And so we'll do the interrupting and ask the questions for you so that we don't have any distracting overlapping. But thank you so much. And Titi and Zakiya, would you mind taking it away and introducing yourselves and your journey?
Hi, I'm Titi Shodiya.
And I'm Zakiya Whatley. Thank you all so much for having us today. We're really excited to talk to you all. As Aubriana said, we are the co-host of Dope Labs podcast, but also really good friends.
Yes. For a very long time.
yes. And our scientific journeys and life journeys are pretty intertwined, I would say, because of that. Mm-hmm. Titi, I don't know if you want to go ahead and start or if you want me to take it.
I can start. So I am born and raised in PG County, Maryland. After high school, I went to undergrad at Penn State, where I majored in material science and engineering and had a minor in mathematics. And while I was there, that was when I first kind of got my first research experience. I started off in a ceramic science lab. And I thought I was just going to be like washing beakers because that's what everybody told me that it was what it was like when you're an undergrad, that they don't expect you to really do anything. But no, they kind of threw me headfirst into actual research. And I started off with a lit search and I was just like, wow, this is a lot. But it really sparked my interest, and the process of going through research and doing experiments on my own and proposing new experiments, that was always really exciting to me. So then that's when I knew that I wanted to go to graduate school. And so after undergrad, I started grad school at Duke. And that's where I met my friend, Zakiya Whatley. And I was studying mechanical engineering and material science. My research focused on nanomaterials for green electric power generation, which was always really interesting to me. I felt like I learned a lot while I was there. But one of the critical things that happened while I was at Duke was meeting Zakiya. It's definitely been a life-changing friendship. We became very fast friends, and I feel very grateful to know her. After graduate school, I started a postdoc at the University of Michigan. And then that was when I decided I didn't want to go into academia. And then from there, I started working for the government.
Awesome. I always love to hear when Titi recaps her story. I wasn't as sure as Titi was. I'm from Greensboro, North Carolina. My experience in science, is easy to look back and weave a story that says, yes, I've always been interested in science, but really I was also like, maybe I could be a dancer. Maybe I could play the trumpet. And even in grad school, I was like, maybe I should just make sausages. You know, I mean, I think I've always been interested in doing, and Titi was there for that.
I was there for that.
You know, but I've always been really interested in a lot of different things. And I was really fortunate to live near a major university, a historically Black college, North Carolina A&T. And so throughout middle school, high school, I was doing programs that were basically bringing science to younger kids. So, you know, kind of STEM exposure programs. And even though I'm trained as a molecular biologist, my first experience was in engineering, which is actually Titi's field. And so I started out doing like an engineering summer program. I was also doing, along with that, a pharmacy tech training program in high school, and a nursing program. That should help you understand that I was all over the place. I was doing all of those programs. I went on to college at Hampton University, which is a historically Black college in Hampton, Virginia. And I said, okay, I'm going to be a nursing major when I applied. But after I had some experience as a nursing assistant, I realized, no, this is not for me. Maybe biology. That was hard. That was fun. And so I was a biology major. And I think one of the changing events for me in that path was applying for, I don't know if you guys, I think Columbia is actually a host site for the Leadership Alliance. In the summers, there's a summer program where undergrads come. It's a summer early experience or something like that, kind of 10-week program. And I did that at Brown, and that changed everything for me. And I said, oh, research is that girl. That's where it's at. I'm gonna do research. And that was maybe my sophomore or junior year, but I still didn't really know. When I went to a lot of like conferences, so Abercams, if you guys have heard of that, and SACNAS, those types of conferences, I went and learned a lot of things. And I was like, okay, grad school. Went to grad school at Duke and became really involved with the program, probably similar to Women in Science, but this was for everyone that was a minority in the sciences in grad school at Duke that was pursuing a PhD, even master's too, at Duke in the sciences. And that's where Titi and I met. We were both really involved in that group. We continue to remain friends with the people we met there, like really close friends. And that kind of set our trajectory. After grad school, I did a teaching postdoc at Gettysburg College. And then I entered a tenure track position as assistant professor of cell biology there. And then from experience decided, no, there's a lot to unpack there. And then I went on to join science administration as assistant director of a biological sciences PhD program at the University of Maryland. And so after that, I then decided to go full-time into science communication and science education and STEM outreach, which is what I'm doing now. I hope that captures.
Awesome. Yeah, that is so awesome. Thank you both so much. That is really cool. And on bouncing off that topic about the group that you found at Duke, I'm going to just go to a particular question that I had before. So like, it's pretty well known, both academia and the podcasting worlds are white male dominated, but are becoming more diverse. So do you have any advice for people in marginalized groups when it comes to networking and finding communities in these two spaces? And is it distinct between those two spaces? Do you have any advice for people?
I think that there's a lot of overlap in the demographics of podcasting and then the academic spaces. And I think a lot of it is rooted in just like the history of our culture, where there are certain voices that are more valued than others. And so there are certain people, because of that history, feel more emboldened to do certain things, and other people who just like, oh, I just kind of experience it from the side, or I just watch and things like that. So I think when we're talking about science, that's definitely the case, where you see not a lot of women, not a lot of people of color who are engaging in the sciences because of those reasons, because it's historically more white, more male. And then the same thing we're seeing with this newer form of communication with podcasting, where when podcasting first made its big splash, it was mostly white males that had podcasts that people listened to. So I think me and Zakiya's experience in podcasting has overlaid, like a lot of our experiences have overlaid almost directly with our experiences as Black women in STEM fields. I think my advice to folks who are interested in, branching out, making networks, is to, if you don't find the community that you want to be a part of, you should absolutely feel like you can create it. Creating those communities so that you create a space, not just for yourself, but for other people who share your similar interests, people that look like you, people who are from your same neighborhood. Like if you build it, they will come, And so sometimes it's a tough step to do, where it's like, oh, it's just me, I don't know, I'm not sure. But if you take that first step and to make a community that you feel like isn't there to create a support system, everyone will show up, and you'll be better for it, and that group will be better for it, and then you can just charge ahead and feel more confident about taking up space in some of these places that are predominantly white male. Yeah, I think that's my advice.
Thank you so much.
I think just to echo and piggyback on what Titi said, one of our favorite sayings is, if you build a ramp, a lot of people who would have otherwise taken the steps will also take that ramp, right? I think I learned firsthand. I can remember my first, one of the like joint classes everybody took. I went in an umbrella program. And one of the first classes that everybody took, we had our first exam, and the professor wrote on my exam, "This does not even make biological sense. Were you in class?" And I was devastated. And I was like, of course I was in class. I know you saw me, right? But afterwards, everybody seemed, when the papers came back, nobody else looked upset like me. And I just said, hey, if anybody doesn't understand and wants to study, hang behind after, I'll be here if you want to talk. Only one person stayed behind to talk, but so many people emailed me later, right? And said, do you want to meet up? Do you want to this and that? And it blew my mind, but it really is a mirror of what we see at each stage. And I think one of the things that Titi and I have learned from grad school and from being in the sciences is to kind of disrupt this culture of like permission. So much of grad school and matriculating and advancing is waiting for your advisor to give you permission to defend, or permission to write, and permission to look for a postdoc, and the postdoc advisor saying, now it's time to write this paper, now it's time, you can look for jobs, now you can this and that. And I'm like, what happens if we disrupt this model of waiting for someone to grant permission, and if we begin to seek opportunities, whether in the spaces that already exist, or like Titi said, creating these other spaces, and deeming ourselves ready. Now, there's a little risk to that. You might not be ready, you could fall on your face, but I think it's been really rewarding for us to not wait for that permission and to push. And so I think if I could give any advice that supplements what Titi said about creating those spaces, is once you create that community, push with that community. And I think that's been super beneficial for us to remember and to keep in mind too, to not wait for somebody to say, yes, you're ready to start a podcast. Yes, you're worthy, to do those things ourselves.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thanks so much. And in the vein of initiative in your podcast, so let's talk about your podcast. So first question, your podcast covers a lot of hot topics in science, but not just that, it overlapped with the coronavirus pandemic, of course. And you not only were covering your distinct topics, but also keeping people aware of new developments COVID-wise and encouraging safe behavior and vaccinations. One, did you get an influx of pandemic-related questions from your listeners? And what was it like sort of balancing semi-reporting on a crisis and also, making it lighthearted and fun still?
I think that was the wildest time for us. Just like everyone else, we were, well, I don't know about everybody else, but I get a lot of my news from Twitter. I like to follow epidemiologists, statisticians. I want to know what they're seeing and what's going on. And so Titi and I are constantly, we're not bots, so we're not scrubbing the internet, but we're consuming a lot of content, okay? And we're sharing it back and forth. And I'm like, hey, there's some stuff happening. I think we should really focus on what's going on with coronavirus. And she's like, yeah, somebody at work was talking about this too. This is early January 2020. Imagine being back there. And I said, oh, okay, well, let's just call NIH, let's call the vaccine center and see if they'll let us come over. Just regular citizens, not even calling in to any friends that we know there. We did. We went there late at night. We saw people working, and I said, oh, wow, you guys are doing so many maxi preps. You are really, you're really working. Look at all these gels. You're seeing everything happening. I'm like, I feel very good. We talked to Dr. Kazmikia Corbett, who led the NIH and Moderna partnered vaccine. She went to UNC while we were at Duke. And so we said, oh, it's so good to see you leading this. I knew the lab that she came from that had been working on coronavirus since the 80s. We felt great. It's 8 p.m. The vaccine center is buzzing. They're talking about all the capabilities and space that they have to do all these things. So we began to record a podcast. This is in early February. We're like, everyone, don't worry. The CDC has our back. NIH, they're moving forward. We feel confident in science, you know? Now you can imagine many weeks later, the tides turned in a way that we couldn't have predicted. And I think that's something we really learned the hard way, right? You know, you create these things and people listen to your episode. So beginning in April, March and April, people began to listen to our episode in droves. And we had told people, you know, be comfortable, be confident, know that these systems are in place. But we were seeing some things, you know, at the national level that didn't make us feel so good. So we were responding to folks that were reaching out to us kind of one-on-one and things like that. And it was our first, it was just like being dropped into hot oil. Like there was no warming up to that experience. That helps us understand that people will consume your content without context. Nobody looked to see what date we published that. Nobody, you know, and so I think it was a really good lesson for us to think about, yes, content in context, but also content as evergreen and always, you know, in the nature of the internet and everything always being accessible and being archived. How do you communicate this sliver of knowing? As scientists, we know these things are what we know right now. We also know that science is constantly changing, and as more information we have, this changes predictions, this changes everything. And I think we had a really good gut check early on to help us remember that not everybody knows that about science, and how can we communicate that is dynamic and not static. And I think that was one of the biggest lessons. It was one of the hardest things to try to figure out how to be lighthearted, but be serious. We ended up coming back and doing another coronavirus update, meeting with some public health folks from Bloomberg at Hopkins. And so, but I think it was just really a crazy learning experience that had major implications, right? Because folks were writing like, what should I do? Should I, do I listen to this? I read this thing and it says that. And there was just so much noise that I think it was hard for people to know who to listen to, what to believe, and when to believe what they had consumed. I don't know, Titi, you have any?
No, that summed it up perfectly. I think trying to discuss really hard topics that, you know, people are emotionally really attached to, like we are all experiencing this pandemic. I think for us, the way that we try and like bring the levity to the situation in places where it's appropriate is just like to constantly remind people that we are also a part of this as well. Like this is something that we are all experiencing, and we're experiencing it in different ways. So highlighting the different ways that people are experiencing the pandemic, but then also finding ways to bring our personal experiences to the table so that somebody listening can say, oh, okay, I'm glad it's not just me. So I think that's another thing that we try and bring into episodes that we're talking about the coronavirus.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Yes, that was amazing answers. And in that vein, you mentioned absorbing a lot of information from Twitter. So I don't know if it's just like the past 5 years or what, but like there are a ton of science communicators on a bunch of different like media platforms these days. So like not just journals and podcasts, but like YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, even TikTok. So what are your thoughts on how science information is getting disseminated in this age of social media where, you know, headlines and sound bites can go viral so quick?
Yeah, so we're constantly on the internet all day, every day. It feels like. I think I recognize somebody, Jacqueline Lord. I feel like I recognize that picture from Twitter. So shout out to you if it is the same person. Thank you for being here. Yeah, I think that it's kind of like a gift and a curse, where I think that with these new tools that we're being presented, where, you know, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all these different ways to communicate science, I think it's a wonderful way to get out information to a lot of people all over the world, and get the information that you feel like is important out. Like if I'm if I see something that Zakiya is putting, I'm like, yes, retweet, da 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 da. I can push that information because I know my friend is very smart. She does the hard work for the rest of us when we don't know the answers. And so I feel confident in what she's doing. But then there's also the other side of that coin where just as quickly as good information and true information is being shared, false information is being shared just as quickly. And so now it's kind of at a place where science communicators are having to combat false information that's being spread really quickly. And so dividing their attention. So it's like, I have to put out this stuff that I know is true, but then also have to combat the false things that are out there. So you just it kind of feels like you're running on a wheel with the way that some of these things are set up. Social media is, I think, really, really great. Lots of people from all over the world can be in contact with each other. You can get to know people, friends. Jacqueline, I think she just wrote that, yes, it is her. You can make new friends. You can learn stuff from each other. But then, there's the other side of it where a lot of misinformation is also being spread sometimes faster than the correct information. So yeah, it's a difficult place to be in as a science communicator. But I mean, I just try and see the beauty in the communication part of it, where, we just have to get more people in the scientific community engaged in ways that can help spread the right information. Because there are a lot of people that are within academia, within the scientific space, who feel like, oh, this information is just for other people who are on my same level, other people in academia, and I don't need to make my work understandable by, the general population. But I think it's really important for scientists to really lock in and say, it is just as important for people within my field to understand my work as it is for someone outside of my field or someone that is completely removed from science. We should all be trying to engage people on multiple levels, because it helps mitigate some of these problems that we are having now, where people are like, why are you guys changing what you said? They don't understand the scientific process that as we learn more, things change. They're like, no, you just don't know what you're talking about. But if we had an open communication and we pulled that curtain back and we allowed people to see how research actually works, then we are coming to a problem like something like a pandemic, where people are armed with knowledge and they know, okay, this government organization is on it. They're tasked with figuring out solutions, and once they come up with a solution, they're going to put it out to us. And as they learn more each day about this virus, they will let us know, and that might change what they ask us to do. And so I feel like people within the scientific community, we have a lot of work that we need to do when it comes to science communication.
Awesome.
Zakiya, did you have anything you want to add? Did I miss anything?
No, you got it.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. And let's see, I think we have one person with a question. Oh, okay. So Paul Brown asks, what are ideas you use to get a general audience interested in topics or things they might not find as interesting at first?
This is one of my favorites. Well, first I'll say, Paul, it really depends on, when you say general audience, are we talking about folks who are showing up for a class, that kind of general audience, or are we talking about, just somebody you're meeting at the bar? I think those things feel very different. But I think one of the techniques and strategies that we use for Dope Labs is to always start with something we know people are interested in. So if you can find something that you already know this audience is interested in, then I try to overlay as much. My favorite thing is to take things that feel very discrete, not related at all, and look for the tiniest thread and build on top of that, right? I think one of the things we know is that folks are not empty vessels, just waiting to be filled with information. They come with their own ideas about what's important, what's not important, what aligns with their values, whether they even are intentionally thinking about those things that runs in the background. And so we always try to say, where's a common ground where we can say, you're interested in this, and so are we, right? And start there and then build out. I think one of the things that's been so important that I really picked up from teaching non-majors, non-majors biology, I think we all can nerd out about the latest findings and phosphorylation and did you know this protein does this and that, right? We can geek out about that because we have a common interest already in those things. And so I think when we start with a common interest, it makes it easy. In the sciences and in our training, all we're doing is just getting tighter and tighter into these communities of common interest. So it becomes harder and harder to untrain your mind to go back to the broad audience, the broad scope. It becomes really hard to do that. And so I think one of the things that I've had to learn is to flip every way I would have ever given a presentation. I think, I used to start out with like, here's the background, here's what we know in the field, blah, 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 blah. And you're burying the question and the lead and you bury the conclusion. That's how we give scientific talks, right? Whereas the general public wants to know, what is the conclusion? Why is it important? Is this even going to be interesting? And so you kind of have to razzle dazzle first and then work backwards for context. And it's just the exact opposite of how we've been trained, really. And I think that is one of the best tools, which is just flipping the way I would give any kind of presentation for a scientific audience, flipping it for a general audience and looking for just trying to find anything that might be interesting that could connect with, even if it's 10% of your audience. Once you get them and you get some head nods, you can keep building from there. That's my advice.
Hi, I have a question if you don't mind me asking verbally. It's a little bit easier this way. Hi, I'm Nick. Claudia, who's also in this meeting with us, and I were part of the center here at Columbia, and we, as part of the outreach program, we started a TikTok basically to just trying to get people interested in science. And this was about 2 months ago. And in that time, we got like 150,000 followers, and it's really blown up, and we have like millions of views and likes, but it's kind of overwhelming. And kind of the question I wanted to ask is, how do you strike a balance between trying to get people interested versus like scientific rigor, right? Because we can recite a research paper and that would be very scientifically rigorous, but nobody would listen to us or watch our TikTok. So we kind of lean towards silly, fun, and just one maybe scientific idea without really maybe the kind of rigor I would expect when I was going to classroom visits and doing demonstrations and writing chemical equations up on boards. So like, where do you see that balance? Like, how important is it to just be fun and exciting, get people interested versus like actually teach really like rigorous scientific knowledge? And thank you for being here.
Thank you. Please put your TikTok in the chat. I want to follow.
I will, thank you.
Yes. I am on TikTok a lot, and you've probably shown up on my For You page. I may already follow you. There's a good chance. Ivy League Science. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it's called Ivy League Science.
I'm pretty sure I've seen your TikToks. Zakiya, maybe we can kind of tag team this just a little bit because I'm kind of thinking as I'm talking. But I feel like this is something that we have to figure out with every single episode that we put out, where we have a scientific concept, or we're starting with something in pop culture, and then we have to decide what is the scientific concept that we want to tie into the episode. And as we are working our way through it, sometimes it's like, this is really heavy. This is really difficult to understand. Maybe we should pull back a little bit here, or maybe we should move things around. So I think this is a really good question, and it takes, I think everybody learns differently. And so being able to put out content that everyone is going to love is impossible. There are going to be some people who are going to say, you need to put more science into this. It'd be better if it had more science. They say that to us. or
Oh, yeah.
we don't care about your friendship. Just give us the science. And there are some people who are like, the only reason why I listen is because of your friendship. I love you and Zakiya. You guys are so much fun. And I'm learning, things that I like, getting social currency, which is what you're doing with your TikTok. So I think that it's difficult to find a balance because you can't please everybody. But I think if you can find something that is something really sticky that you can add into each one, where it's like, this is what the takeaway is. This is the concept we want people to know from this, 1 minute, 2 minute video. And really keep that in the forefront of your mind so that it helps frame the rest of the video. So for us, we'll say, Zakiya is always really good at this. She says, what do we want people to walk away with? What do we want them to know? And so then we focus on that and then we build around that. So then from top to bottom, we have a focus in mind of how we want to talk about things, when we want to really drill down on a point, or when we want to expand on something, or when we want to just like kind of glaze over something because it can get a little bit too into the weeds, and that's not really the focus that we want to have.
Yeah, I think Titi hit a really good example for how we are dealing with this every episode. And I think if I can zoom out a little bit, I think the larger thread is, I think there are two major points for me when I hear this question. One, who is your audience, right? Who is your audience and who are you trying to serve? When we start Dope Labs, we made 3 little Post-it notes of people. Is your audience your advisor? Is your audience somebody else that's in grad school? Or is your audience somebody who would never even think that they wanted to know anything about science? Is your audience a high school student who is just a little bit curious about biology? Is your audience some other influencer that you want to pick up and share this thing, right? That makes it look like they are aware of what's going on. So once you define your audience, serve those people only, right? I think a thing that becomes very tricky as scientists, and this is something that Titi and I have faced when she said, people tell us, oh, it's not enough science. I don't have to prove my scientific credibility. I've already done that, right? And so the scientific rigor, yes, I can do that. That's easy. It's easy for me to recite what's in the latest paper, but it's a lot harder, which we've seen since 2020, to communicate this to folks who have no interest, who have no background information, who have no additional context, who don't know the canon around, these subjects. And so if your goal is to inform broadly, you can't always inform broadly and deeply, right? So you have to pick one. And maybe it is that you go through, I haven't looked at Ivy League science, but I'm like, maybe you go through and some things that you shared before that were really good, you decide to go back and do deep dives there, right? In one vein, in one topic. Maybe you go back and do that. I think, there's this pressure in the sciences to be scientifically rigorous, but sometimes that rigor causes us to lose the message, right? I think we saw this when people talk about vaccines and, well, how many people are being vaccinated? I'm like, numeracy is not something that the public grasps well, right? So we cannot be out here talking about base rate fallacy to people who are never dealing with that, right? And so I think sometimes the surface level is just what you need with one takeaway. And we can get caught up in our own world of like, did I explain this caveat, to this example that I'm giving? And once you go down that road, you have lost your audience. And so I think it's always important to first define the audience and serve them. And so you continue to make content that resonates. It sounds like your content has been resonating and you've been growing with your, with growing your audience. More of the same. Anybody that's looking for your scientific rigor, point them to your publications.
All right, thank you so much.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you so much. And we have another question from Casey. As a climate scientist, so much of what you said about the challenges of expressing scientific uncertainty and debunking misinformation during your coverage of COVID has resonated. Do you have any strategies to combat the current widespread politicization of science?
That's a tricky one.
Yeah.
Go ahead, sorry.
No. Strategies.
I try to stick to the facts.
Yeah,
Right?
that's what I was gonna say. I was like, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
And we've been reading a book that's about to come out about science denialism, right? And I think this politicization, like this almost like stratifying of scientific information in these new buckets, this is really new. Maybe when I say new, I mean, science is old, so I mean like 5 to 8 years, it feels new to me. I can't remember earlier on going and saying something as a scientific fact and people were like, I don't believe that. I'm like, huh? That feels really new. And so I think we're learning how to navigate that. And the thing that we've done in our podcast, and I don't know if we have any particular strategy, but it is to say, now you may have heard this, and this. Here are the pieces of it that are true, but here's this other part that's not, right? And so I think helping people, if you already know this is what a certain side is saying about climate change, right? I think Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson does a really great job of this, and we had her on the show. If you can find something that doesn't feel like it's a hot topic, so if we don't start out talking about climate, but we start out saying, my favorite thing to do, it is to have a gin drink and raw oysters. But did you know that oysters are endangered? Did you know that this, and this? And did you know we had this many oysters at this point, but now we have so few? And what this means as a threat to, the Chesapeake watershed. And so I think when we try to remove, it goes back to like, how do you make people interested in something that they're not necessarily interested in? It is just trying to find this non-confrontational, but a little bit exciting, likely to something where you can bond with your audience that says, I am not your enemy. That's the strategy that we have used. And we've tried to choose a topic that feels safe, that doesn't feel polarizing, start there and just say, hey, these are the facts. Whether you, like them or not, these are the facts, and to go from there. I think there's especially in climate, there are so many minds that I didn't expect going in, but we've learned to try to navigate. Titi, sorry, you got anything you want to?
No,
bolster?
I guess just to underscore what Zakiya is saying, is like another another thing that we do is also try and say, hey, look, we get it. There's a lot of false information out there. We've all fallen victim to false information. I think none of us are immune to seeing something and just thinking that it's true. Like you see the headline and you're like, oh, wow, this is what's true. That's just, I guess, human nature. And so that's one thing that I think that we also try and say in our show occasionally, where it's like, oh, this is like that time that, like Zakiya has this thing about bugs, where she's very scared of all shiny back beetles and things like that. And we were doing a show where she was talking about how, I guess when you were there, at some point on the internet, they were saying that all cereal has like a little bit of like junk in it or something like that, like bugs and stuff like that. But then you can't remember where you saw it. You can't remember if somebody told you that. You don't remember how true it is, but it becomes fact in your mind. So like those types of things or like, oh yeah, when I was growing up, I heard that person across the street, like, has been living there by themselves their whole lives. They've been there for 100 years. They have magical powers, and you don't remember who said it. You don't remember why they said it. You just feel like it's true. But then if you ask some questions and you do the work, you can get to what fact is. And so that's one of the things that I'm really proud of that we do with the show is taking people sometimes on this journey with us, where it's like, okay, what do we know?
Yeah.
Or what do we think we know? What are some questions that we can ask in order to get to to either solidify what we know, what we think we know, or to challenge what we thought we know and to unlearn what we have already learned. And unlearning is the hard part. But I think the more we put out there that it's just like, just ask one more question. Ask a question. You see a headline, ask a question. Even if it's from a reputable source, ask a question. The worst that can happen is that you say, that's right. But the best that can happen is that it takes you on down a path, or maybe I should reverse that. The best that can happen is that they're right. The worst that can happen is that it can open your mind to more information to make you either form your own opinion if it's something that's opinion based, or can lead you to what the actual fact is.
I think just to now, this always happens. We won't be able to stop. You know, what is really fun that we've done is not position ourselves as sages on the stage, right? When you are a sage on the stage, people are always looking for, oh, you said this thing, that's not quite right, this, and that. All we can do is model that we are human, that cognitive bias exists, whether it is confirmation bias or some other thing, right? Whether it's an issue with numeracy, those things, these biases exist. And so how do we then challenge ourselves and to help people see that, yes, scientists are human. So that means that the nature of science will follow these other systems that exist in our life as far as what we deem worthy of studying, what aligns with the values and the assumptions we already have, even though we have trained ourselves, well, we didn't train ourselves, but even though we have been trained to not bring those things in when we are making hypotheses and evaluating information, sometimes these things seep in, right? I think we've all had something we thought that was gonna work fail. I'm pretty sure if you're here, you've had it happen. And so we often don't feel so as emotionally tied to being wrong. When I am wrong, I learn something new, it is better. A lot of people don't like that, right? And I think that's something that so we try to model what it's like to change my mind, to get new information and decide to change my mind and how useful that can be. I think that's one of the things that has been really fun with Dope Labs. And I think Titi always makes a really good point of saying it's okay to unlearn. It's okay to change your mind. It's okay to think something new. And I just think that's been the name of the game lately.
Yeah, that concept of it's okay to unlearn is super valuable. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I want to make sure we get to another question. Jacqueline asks, would you two talk about how we can get people to an understanding that we are watching the process of science unfold in real time? It seems a lot of people who are resistant to COVID information cite changing science. So in a similar vein.
This is an everything problem. I mean, we have always, and scientists are part of the problem. We say like, I'm the scientist, the information I have is objective, it is true, it upholds, this is it, look at this pillar of information. When we know day to day, that is not how it works. You start collecting more samples, you're like, the trend is different, right. And so I have some ideas about how it should change early on. And so I think in early education, if we were to change how we present science as not just a series of facts and things that have been discovered and known since the beginning of time, I think that would change people's understanding that we are with something new, we're constantly learning things. And I think that's been the hardest thing for us. I find myself telling people, COVID is really new. We're really learning these things. This information is changing, and coronaviruses have been around forever. Viruses have been in a molecular arms war with their host cells for a very long time. And so how do you help people think about both when they've been told, this is the fact, it's always the fact. The mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. That's what you told me in 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th. They're not used to seeing it in real time. And I think it could be really useful. Shout out to Ivy League Science, maybe, to take some things that we now know as fact and to see how that fact has evolved over time, right? How people thought, well, there's still some people that believe this, like the earth was flat, and now we know that it's round. And so just how can we show people how knowledge is both shared, challenged, ideas are then changed? How can we demonstrate that this is not unique to COVID, that everything has gone through this series of community editing? Science is a community editing process. And so I don't know if there's some way to help people outside the sciences understand this process, because they only in the past have seen the final product, and it's going to take a lot of different stages. I think it takes it in the education stage. Even if I don't go into the sciences, I should at some point learn that this is how decisions are made about public health. I think we found, and so long we've championed, lab and bench work as the hardest science, where it's starting to look like social science is the hardest. Because we have the vaccine, but how do we help people understand that they should take it? How do we change ideas? How do we change minds? That's what we're talking about in these questions here.
I have nothing to add to that. That was absolutely perfect. I was just like humming and nodding along. Yes, it was perfect. Yeah.
I don't know if I answered Jacqueline's question, but I feel like I gave you some more questions back about, how can we where can we demonstrate it? What are some good examples?
It's really tough. It's a tough question that I think a lot of science communicators are grappling with in real time right now. And I think, the jury's still out on some of these things, but I feel optimistic that we'll eventually get there. I think the way that, generationally things are changing with how information is consumed, like, me and Zakiya, our generation, the internet started when we were, in, how old are we? Middle school.
I was in elementary school. C:\backspace. I don't know if anybody's that old here.
But the internet, with how easily you can get information. Like I was doing book reports using an encyclopedia, flipping real life pages and looking for stuff like that. But now you could just type something in 0.003 seconds, you can get thousands of results. And so I think that generationally things are changing with how people consume information. And now people are a little bit more critical of what they see, because before, if it was on the internet, it's got to be true, right? Isn't there like a process or something? But now we know that there is no process. You can put anything you want to on the internet. And so I think that what Zakiya was saying with catching people early on and teaching them some of these skills as they move forward, I think that's going to start happening. Well, fingers crossed, it's going to start happening. And then I think just with time, the way people interact with information on the internet is going to change.
Yeah,
I hope so.
Yeah, that is very important and very very well articulated. Thank you. It makes me think of like the anecdotal phenomenon of like when you interface with a concept, like the first opinion that's associated with it is the one you like associate with the truth of that concept. Like even if it's just rumors, like even if it's most likely unfounded, there's this piece of you that sticks with that as base foundational truth for that concept.
Yes. Yeah. Now overlay algorithms on top of that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Right.
So things that you've already searched.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I do want to, we have 10 minutes. Everyone continue to please ask questions. I'm going to shift to a couple questions I had prepared. But what was one of your favorite topics to research, like as you were preparing one of your episodes?
I think the things that feel like the least what you would think of as science are some of my favorites, because it feels like a stretch, and what we get to do is, like, I enjoyed talking about the vaccine, but I understand replication, I understand, infection, I understand all those things. And so it is something I already know. But when I get to understand the housing market and forbearance and how that is related to the labor shortage, which is really a wage shortage, right? When I look at all those things being tied together, those things are exciting to me. That is what really gets me going. I'm like, this is the exact same, all these processes, all these systems work together, and how
food security, everything.
Yes. And so there's this, it feels like we throw our rod, right? If we think about it as fishing and looking for topics, we try to throw our rod really far. And every time I'm like, look, this fish eats this fish eats this fish. We're back at the same big well. It's all connected. And that never ceases to amaze me. That never ceases to thrill me. And I think so. Housing, student loans, learning about what's going on there. I
Yeah.
stop student loans, you know, and so I just think those types of things are really exciting to me. Those have been some of my favorites. TT, some of your faves?
Yeah, I think similarly, like I really love the episodes where it's a topic where that you don't typically see as something that is discussed in science. Like I really love our episode on friendship and the science of friendship, where we bring in a friendship expert. She has a PhD in psychology, but she specializes in friendships and platonic relationships. And it was so good, because there's just so much science within friendship dynamics and things like that. And so I thought that was a really great episode that really shined a light on something that I didn't necessarily think of as science. I was open to it being science, but the depths of it, I was completely unaware of. And I learned a lot from that.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, the episode particularly on student loans kind of blew my mind. I was like, I think it was entirely political, and of course it is, but there's a lot of like infrastructure built into like the way that it's ended up now.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And so you had an episode on burnout that really resonated with me in regards to the moment we had in lockdown and academia as well, and fatigue that comes along with that. Like I want to ask, during your own PhD experiences, did you have any ways that you either avoided or managed burnout or interfaced with it?
I've got to lean on my friend, because she knows that I don't be handling stress well. Like the burnout would come and I would just be like, burn me. Like I just thought it was a part of it. And so I just felt like some of the feelings that I was having, that, oh, this is how I'm supposed to feel. I'm supposed to feel like really, really sad, really, really low, really like just caught up with all these things. But she definitely showed me another side of life where it doesn't have to be that way.
You know, I think I came in at a really, I started my PhD at a really interesting time. It was 2007. And so I was in my PhD for 7 years. And when TT came along, 2007 is like the recession, the housing market collapse. And so people were in grad school and like, you should be glad to be here. You have a paycheck. There are many people that want to do this. You should work. And there was this sentiment, which persists, that the training is supposed to break you. And if it breaks you, then you rise, then you are the best of the best. You did it. Look at you, you know? And I was like, oh, I'm easy to break. Okay, so this is not sustainable. So what else is there? And I was really lucky to have someone who was leading this organization that we talked about earlier, the Boucher Society, somebody who was leading that, who said, hey, you need to come be a part of this. We'll show you how to have a community, how to navigate through these things. You don't have to learn everything alone. Learn from some of the mistakes that we built up over, you know, these years of experience. And so when TT came, I was like, hey, girl, I see what you're doing. I did that same thing. You're doing it wrong. Come over here. Let me show you. And so what I found, which is still how I continue to live, I think, or try to, is when we were able to, TT and I think, got to a process where we were working all day. It was like, hey, how much stuff can I get in this little bit of time? It felt like we were unlocking stars. It felt, you know, like just new achievement, when I can overlay my PCR and the gel and the plate reader, and I can line all these things up and everything's running and it's all done at this time. We can then go to the bar, have a couple drinks. Let's come back, check on my cells. All right, let's take some ODs and see how everything is going. And, you know, so just like we were looking for ways to build in some joy around these things. And we found when we would step away, you come back with such a clear head. You come back with ideas. You come back with this ability and this desire to push things forward. And sometimes being away from the work helps you think about other ways to do things. And so for me, that was the only way. I think now, when TT came, I was all the way on the leisure, and by the time she showed up, I was already at the very far on the spec on the end that was at all leisure. I was like, girl, we're never gonna get out of here anyway. Might as well have a good time. You wanna go to a seminar, you wanna do this, this, and that. And so it was a good balance, right? Because I was able to show her that you can have fun and do these things. And she was like, hey, old grad student, get back to work. I know those things didn't work out for you, and I know it feels like you'll never get done, but get back to work. So it was her zest for the science was good for me at a time where I was feeling really low and like, this is not going to work. And so I started picking up some other projects, and we would just set deadlines. And we had these notebooks, and we just would push each other to both go all out in our research and our results. And I learned so much engineering just hearing her talk and reading the things that she was doing. And she gave so much to me that, you know, in engineering, they do things a lot different. I was like, if I try that, maybe my committee will understand that I am actually close on this thing. And maybe they will understand the, you know, what I'm presenting here. And so it just was a really good give and take. And we met each other at, I think, just the right time.
Just the right time. Yeah, it really, I guess the bottom line for me is just community, and finding in a community. I think that when folks use that term, people think of a very specific thing, and that's like, oh, having a group of friends that you always, but sometimes it's not that. Sometimes your community could be one person. It doesn't have to be somebody that's not related to you. It could be somebody that's in your field, or it can be your community within yourself. Sometimes you just need to recharge and be by yourself and do things for you and focus on you and not, you know, include a lot of different people. So community can look like a lot of different things to a lot of different people. I think it's really important to figure out what re-energizes you, what helps you regain focus, what helps you feel like, what helps you get back into the lab with a fresh mind, a fresh body, a fresh spirit, and feel like you can do it another day and another day and another day. So whatever that looks like for you, definitely lean into that and feel like you can take that time to incorporate that into your life.
Thank you both so much. Yeah, that was fantastic. Really good concrete advice too. Thank you. Let's see, we have 2 more minutes. I'm gonna sneak in one more question, but everyone's free to head out at the mark. And thank you everyone so much for being here. So I do wanna ask, given everyone's schedules being limited always, what are little like effective, actionable things that scientists or grad students like us can take to be more accessible and like make their science more accessible? Like we've heard TikTok, we see you creating a podcast. Have you seen any other examples that you love?
I think Titi, you have something? Go ahead.
No, go for it. Go ahead.
The first example I love is understanding that every single person has value, right? And it feels like you have to do something that's big and splashy. Like I gotta make a fancy website. I gotta create this TikTok channel. I gotta create this YouTube channel. I have to post this content. Hey, you need to talk to your cousin because they also don't understand these things. Tell your aunt, tell your grandma. Like I think that is actually how Dope Labs came about. Titi and I were just talking to each other and to other people at a bar in Durham, North Carolina, and talking to other people from other schools, not knowing it, right? Just, hey, this is what we studied. This is what I was thinking. Oh, that's really cool. This, and that. Oh, and somebody says, oh, you're a scientist. I have a question about this. I have a question about that. And we're just talking and throwing them back. Now, I do believe, yes, you should have a limit to make sure that, the things you're saying are accurate. But we found like that was the beginning of Dope Labs. And so I was understanding, here are things that people are interested in. So then we took those things and took them to the classroom when we would teach. We took those tools. And so I don't think it has to be, you don't have to go wide, right? You can go right around you. You don't have to pick up a new platform. Just speaking and talking to people about what you do and just sharing what you know, I think those things are just as valuable because you need penetration in the day-to-day in the people in your circle, and that can then push further and further out. I think that's just as valuable.
I agree 100%. I think one of my favorite things that I did in grad school was give all of my presentations to my dad, who is a poli-sci, who was a poli-sci major in undergrad. He knows nothing. He doesn't know anything about any of the work that I was doing. But I knew that if at the end of this presentation that I'm giving him, if he could tell me what exactly I was doing, I knew that it was a good presentation. because he has no ties to my work at all. His only tie is just his emotional connection to me. And if he said, I don't really understand that. No, I didn't really get it. I'm like, okay, let me go back, rework some things, or I'll say, what part of it, where did I lose you? He's like, on slide 3. And so then I'll look at that slide and say, okay, what in this slide can I make more digestible? And so I would go back. What do you think about this? Oh yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. And so then I was like, okay, I'm on the right track. So those are the things that I think are really important, because not everybody's gonna have a TikTok channel with 150,000 followers, you know.
We keep picking on you guys.
we do, but I think it's amazing. I think it's so amazing the work that you guys are doing, but not everybody's going to do that. But what I want to say is, don't feel like the efforts that you make, even if small, even if it's just giving your presentation to your dad or to somebody in your family or somebody in your neighborhood or in your community, is like worthless or not as important. All of that work is important.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think the thing is, we need more. We need more.
Mm-hmm.
More opportunity for exposure, more opportunity for people to learn. And who knows, you may only have 20 followers, but it may be, like Aubriana said, that first thing that this person learns about this that sticks and that resonates. And so I think the nice thing about the internet is that everybody's looking for a little bit of community, and there's space for everyone. One of my favorite things to do is to find some top influencer that has like 4 million followers, and we don't have a single follower in common. And I'm like, look at this, 4 million people, and I don't know a single person. There's enough internet for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Build your own little space if you want to be on the internet.
Yeah, thank you so much. And so we'll end with this one last question from Nicholas and let everyone go. Nicholas says, what motivated you to launch your podcast? More specifically, why did you choose that medium as opposed to blog, YouTube, TikTok, etc.? And do you have plans to expand to other media?
I think we chose podcasting because at the time there were a lot of people who were starting podcasts, and the barrier to entry just seems super low. With YouTube, you feel like, okay, every hair's got to be in place. Let me sit up straight. Let me make sure that you need good lighting, you need a good camera. But with podcasting, you literally can record on your phone. Like, you could pick up your iPhone and talk into it, and that's a good mic, honestly. If any of you are thinking about starting a podcast, talking to your iPhone, talking to your smartphone, record yourself talking. It's a great place to start because the audio is good. And so we thought of podcast because the barrier to entry was super, super low. And we knew that that's a great place to start, not having to need like whole production and lighting and things like that. And with the way that people consume podcasts, it can be, whenever you're ready. It can be when you're driving in your car. It can be when you're going for a run. It could be when you're having your morning coffee. They can take you with them. And some of the other mediums, it's kind of like you have to be in this space at this time, have it be quiet and all these things like that. And with the podcast, we felt like, oh, you can just kind of come as you are and listen whenever you're ready. And it seemed to work out really, really well.
And it lends itself to what our lifestyles were. Like, I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to do things in the lab and look and listen. But when I'm doing mindless
Mm-hmm.
tasks, if I'm washing glassware or I'm autoclaving or I am, making media and pouring plates, I can listen to whatever because I can do this stuff on auto. When I'm washing dishes at home, when I like things that don't require me to look and listen, I'm much more likely to consume. And so I think that also is the idea. Just like TT said, you can drive. If you can't drive and watch YouTube, you shouldn't. And but those are kind of things that made podcasting feel appealing to us. And there's a certain intimacy too, even though people don't see your face, but it's just you in their ears. And there's something that we have been exploring and trying to understand about audio. When you take away the face, you really can get to the tone and what people are saying. And there's something about the audio experience, like our ears are really the only thing we can't really turn off, and so how can we take advantage of that, and how can we try to connect in that way?
Great. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you both so much. And thank you everyone who asked questions and everyone who came and took time out of your day to be here. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And you can feel free to reach out to WISC with any extra questions about like what we do if you're interested in getting involved. Thank you, Titi and Zakiya, again so much. It was amazing to meet you. And this will be recorded and on our website if that's all right with you both. But yes, thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks,
Thank you so
everybody. It was so
much.
great to chat with you.
Thank you.